Alrighty, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Move 101 podcast. Dr. Levi Garrett here, joined by my colleague, as always, Dr. Andrew Harbison, Senior. I would throw a question over to you, but I want to hog the mic today because that's what I'm feeling.
Please do.
In all seriousness, today we have an opportunity to do a product review. This is something that we've kind of kicked around a little bit in our behind the curtain conversations, if you will. And in all reality, I mean, it's an opportunity for us to try things as kinesiologists. We've throughout our careers tried weightlifting programs, we've tried diets, we've tried supplements, and we've kind of seen like, hey, does this stuff work or not? And I've really enjoyed that process, number one, because I can get some benefit from it if this thing works, right? But also when students ask me or when friends and family ask me about, hey, what do you think about the keto diet? I'm like, oh, that was 5 years ago. And as people say, oh, how's the carnivore diet? Oh, yeah. I mean, so it's nice to try some of these things out. And so we were kind of kicking around this idea of, hey, let's see like where we're struggling or some things that we could or want to enhance. And one of those things was cognitive function. We're parents, we work full time, we got side businesses or hustles or things that we're always doing. And brain fog is one of those things that has crept in from time to time. And there's many reasons for that. And we'll get into some of those reasons why and dive a little bit deeper there. But we are always looking to try to enhance our performance. And a lot of that starts with the mental side of things. And so this long introduction is to reveal that we took the last month. So what was it? September, I guess, or no, August, excuse me. We took the month of August to try a supplement called Alpha Brain, which is a nootropic. It's been around for a little while now. What was it? Maybe 8 years now, probably somewhere in there. When it first kicked off, don't know the full history of the product, but one of its main ingredients has been something that's been looked at. I think the first study I saw was in 1986. And this primary component or ingredient of Alpha Brain is alpha GPC. If you'd like to pronounce GPC, go Google it and then Google Translate or whatever that's called.
What is it? Glycerophosphocholene or something like that?
Yes. So
GPC is much easier.
Yes, way easier. And so we'll be referring to that throughout. But alpha GPC is one of the primary ingredients in Alpha Brain. And so we'll kind of go a little bit deeper into that. But that's kind of the why behind this. Essentially, for those of you, those parents that are looking to, again, enhance performance cognitively, physically, and otherwise,
take some drugs, man.
Yeah, take drugs. You may be into the supplement. You may be interested in supplements. So we were like, hey, if people ask us about it, I want to be able to have something to say, and thought it was kind of a fun thing to do. So looking forward to continuing these because it's always fun to experiment on yourself. But I will kick it over to you, Senior. How was maybe your experience, or do you want to talk about some of the suggested or proposed benefits of this from the company? And then we can dive into the research and some of the things that we found. Where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for that was a long-winded
intro. Yeah.
Stop talking.
Let's cut it in post and change it to a, hey, how's it going?
Hey, everybody. Now, so this is, again, it's part of it is like you said, it's fun to kind of experiment with some of this stuff. Hope to see some benefits, but as with any supplement, it's probably wise to throw out a disclaimer of, make sure you consult your physician before you start taking anything. Don't just blindly take supplements. Like I don't want to say that we are blindly taking this. Like we did kind of jump in and look at this a little bit and look at some of the research, but always be careful with this, because one of the main things that we always try to reiterate to our students when we're teaching a nutrition class or getting into supplement discussions of any kind is one of the main problems with the supplement industry is that it is unregulated by and large. And the FDA does not, or at least in America, the FDA does not have hands-on as far as testing claims, testing evidence to make sure, hey, if you have a label, making sure that the things on the label are actually what is in the supplement. A lot of companies will do third-party testing, and that's one of the things we always recommend when you're looking to take a supplement is make sure that is a third party testing it to identify is what is on the label actually in the thing that you're taking. So always just something to be aware of as, again, kind of a disclaimer to get that out of the way. But all that to be said, we we'll jump in here on Alpha Brain and some of the ingredients. Maybe I'll just kind of list off some of the main ingredients, and we can jump into the claims from there. So there are the way this label is broken down from Onnit is the company that makes Alpha Brain. There is a focus blend, a flow blend, and a fuel blend. And the focus blend has alpha GPC, Bacopa monnieri, Huperza serrata root extract, or Hoop A is kind of the shortened version of that. The flow blend is L-tyrosine, L-theanine, both amino acids. L-leucine is in there. Then oat straw extract and phosphatidylserine. The fuel blend is vinpocetine and pterosilbene and something called AC11. So if all of that is as much gibberish as it is to me, then we're on the same page. But we'll break down some of these ingredients, right? There is evidence for some of these ingredients to actually benefit cognitive function. So we're going to get into kind of a brief discussion of some of the research that supports some of those, and then kind of matching that up to the claims that Onnit makes with this supplement. So as Levi mentioned, kind of the main reason that we are approaching this is as potentially sleep deprived parents, or just parents who have a lot going on. The idea of, is there a way that we can boost some of these cognitive or memory, or, one of the things that I see claimed with Alpha Brain is kind of the verbal memory aspect of, for someone or people in our situation where we have to give lectures or speak or have podcasts, the idea of being able to kind of recall words smoothly and efficiently is an important piece. So if you are someone who's speaking and needs a little bit of a boost there, this may be something of interest, in addition to the whole sleep deprivation thing. And I think that's actually, speaking of long-winded, I'm doing the opposite here, or they're doing the same thing that you did of hogging the mic a little bit. But I think that is honestly, and this we'll probably come back to this in the conclusion, but one of the main things I would reiterate here is, yes, there are supplements out there that include nootropics and things that may benefit, but as with any supplement that you're looking at, 98%, that's a random number, but the vast majority of any benefits that you're going to see from a supplement are going to be far outweighed by doing the basics, right? Sleeping 8 hours a night, eating quality food, exercising, take care of those pillars of health. And you don't really need supplements. The supplement is a little dash of a pinch of salt on top that maybe might help a little bit to refine or give you that little extra boost. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you're really looking for memory and focus and, cognitive benefit, go sleep, go get 8 hours of sleep a night and do that for a week. And I guarantee you, your cognition will be boosted far greater than it is by a little supplement, whatever that supplement is.
And I think that's a good spot to maybe pause for a second, and perhaps we can even not go into each supplement we've ever tried, but just the word supplement in general. I mean, it's something added to complete something, to make up for a deficiency. And so essentially what that means is you should be doing everything else. And then this is a supplement to that. It's not a primary, it's not a staple, it's not a pillar. That said, there's going to be moments where, maybe you're traveling, and so your sleep wasn't as good. And so you can take a supplement to kind of fill that gap in an acute situation. But if you chronically eat poorly, if you chronically don't sleep, and if you chronically aren't physically active, no supplement is going to help that. And if it does, it's probably not an over-the-counter supplement, because it's probably a medical grade drug that needs a prescription
or illegal.
Yeah, exactly. And so keep in mind, and this is, when we're talking about this, it's not to either promote it or to poo-poo it by any means. Like, this is just our experience with it and what we've seen in some of the literature. And so take that for what it's worth, basically, is that
resist the urge to think any supplement is going to change your life.
Correct.
More than the basics.
But it could, and I say that, and here we are in the beginning, and I'm introing it as like, hey, we're looking for enhancing performance. It has a better, I'm trying to select my words wisely. It has a better chance of doing that if you're doing everything else correct. And so I really want to stop and make that a big reminder, because I know for me, when I was in high school or college, and you see like, oh, this dude's on protein. Oh, if I take this protein, I'm going to get jacked. No, you ain't. You ain't getting jacked, dude. You got to eat a bunch. You got to train a bunch, and you have to have the physical biology or the physiology to be able to do that. So it's not no supplement will save you like that.
Nope.
Or anyways, so
yeah,
I don't
exactly
wanna,
like you said. The word supplement should be the key there. It's like this
yeah.
is in addition to, not the like the temptation is, hey, this is a shortcut, right? Because I just have to pop a
Mhm.
pill and boom, there it goes. People like shortcuts, right? We're inherently a little bit lazy, but resist that urge with any
Mhm.
supplement. Even the two that actually really work are creatine and caffeine. Like those are the supplements that actually enhance performance over and over and over and over and over in the research, right? So yes, those do work. Everything else, the claims are pretty small at best. There are
Mhm.
some things that might work a little bit better than others. So yeah, I think that's probably we've covered our bases there with
Yeah.
the disclaimers. But I
So
think it's
as you
always
listen to the rest of this, take that,
yes,
have that in the back of your mind. So when we say something pro or against, it does not mean the end all, and it does not mean it's a flop either. So keep
yep,
that in mind.
yep. So Levi, what are some of the I mentioned like one of the main claims here from Onnit is kind of that verbal memory or
Mhm.
cognition in general. That's a very broad term, but that's certainly one of the main claims there that we can quote unquote enhance cognitive function in cognitively healthy adults. So this is really the target population is cognitively healthy individuals. So we're not looking
Mhm.
at people who have cognitive decline or dementia or other things. Although, interestingly, a lot of the research on many of these ingredients is in the cognitively
Mhm.
declined population. So
Yeah.
it's kind of an interesting,
So maybe we can look at why that is. So one of the suggestions is that there's an increase in what would the right word be? Available, I should say, maybe available acetylcholine.
free choline.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so now in thinking that, so we have acetylcholine, which is this neurotransmitter and
Murder.
neurotransmitter
Thanks, Ja
that's,
Rule.
yeah, thanks a lot, dude. What is it? Fire Island or
Fire
something? Go back.
Fest.
Yeah, go back to Firefest. So it's acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that's responsible for communication between nerve cells. So we talk about a sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and this aids in our parasympathetic system. And stop me as soon as I start going off the rails,
Now.
because this experience, yeah, this experience helped me, reminded me of brushing up on the XFizz and all the other stuff. So it's kind of cool to dig into some of this stuff. But basically, the goal is, or acetylcholine is a contributor to memory, learning, and some muscular contractions. So if we have more levels of that, then voila, we now have better of all of that. And
That's the main driver that they're trying to get to is by increasing acetylcholine and free choline, like you mentioned in the
mhm,
brain, you increase verbal memory, you increase the firing of neurons. One of the things that also kind of you see in there, part of the claim that they're making and part of the research with things that enhance acetylcholine is this ability to kind of avoid distractions. Like that's
mhm,
one of the cognitive tests that you'll see is, are you able to complete a task while other things are kind of going around in the background? And how quickly does your attention shift to these other things versus the task at hand? So kind of task orientation and the ability to stay on task. That's one of the primary benefits that theoretically could be achieved here with alpha GPC in particular, is
mhm.
this ability to stay on task longer and avoid distraction.
Right. So I think your question was basically, did it work for me? Is that as I'm trying to focus, right?
Well,
Uh,
yeah, right. I will try to distract you. I'll start
yeah,
juggling over here on the side and
exactly.
see if you can keep talking.
Yeah.
No, I think that's probably I think a good place to begin is just the claims and kind of what each of these ingredients may benefit, and then we can get into our actual specific results maybe after that.
Yeah, yeah, I kind of looked more at, so it sounds like in chatting about this a little bit with you, I looked more at the alpha GPC specifically as kind of the primary driver for all of this. And so that's one of the primary ingredients in the alpha brain. And then you can also buy just straight alpha GPC, and most of the studies had different levels of dosing. There's a handful of studies that I read. Most so I'm hesitant. I Whenever I read research, I'm always thinking to myself, I'm getting into the scientific, the scientific literature and doing this, but then I get so I get into kind of a negative space with it, because then I start to question. And as someone that's published research, I'm sure that people do the same thing to my stuff too. And so I have to give the authors grace and myself grace of, like, remember, they're not asking all the questions. In a typical paper, you're asking one question,
Mhm.
and the reason for that is that you can ask a million, and then it makes it too hard to kind of capture this stuff. So most of the studies, to your point, we're looking at whether or not improved strength. And the two of them that we're looking at that had grip strength. One of them looked at a counter movement jump, but then also a variety of cognitive tests. And in the studies that I read, there was no statistically significant benefits or enhancement to any of those things, be it strength, cognitive function. I need to, speaking of, funny enough, recall, like memory recall, that was also included in one of them. And there were no statistically significant findings. There's no statistical significant findings. What's interesting, as a quick pause there, is in a lot of research papers, a paper will state correctly that there was significance to this study, but it was statistical significance. That said, though, as you read papers, that's why you need to read beyond just the abstract and get into the methodology, and the results. Just because there's statistically significant results does not mean that it's actually significant, kind of more from an application perspective.
Like practically significant.
Correct.
And they're different than statistically significant.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong here, but what the statistic is saying that is statistically significant is you will consistently get these results. So,
well, it's saying that, we're getting into statistics 101. It's that it's not due to chance, right?
Yes, right, correct. So even though there's not a big change, that change will always appear. And that's what that
not
can
always.
be.
It's that this change is, we can say with 95 or greater % certainty that this effect is not due to chance. It's due to the treatment that we administered.
Correct. And that's statistical significance. But that thing, that outcome could be so minute that it doesn't really matter anyways.
The other funny part that we were kind of laughing about beforehand was there is, we're going to pick on Onnit a little bit here, but there is a study that Onnit funded out there by, I believe it's Solomon et al., that looked at the effects of alpha brain on a whole, when I say a whole host of cognitive outcomes, I mean 26 different tests that they threw up against the wall, and 2 of those 26 showed statistical significance. However, one of those tests I have, and one of the things Levi and I were kind of laughing at beforehand was, again, this idea of real world application. Like, there are cognitive tests out there that, for example, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, here is the trail making test. This is one of the tests that the study I mentioned used. It's also a test that I used in my dissertation and some of the research I've done for cognition in kids. And what you're doing is you're trying to connect dots, 1A, 2B, 3C, as fast as you can. Yes, this is a validated measure of cognition. Does this have any real world application? Is, I think, one of the things you're getting at here is, if I'm a tired parent and I need to go deliver a speech for work, does this help me to be able to connect lines? Not really. And so that's, I think, a fair point to bring up, a fair, hopefully fair critique here of research. Like, you're limited, like you said, in, we can't just go have Joe Schmo go deliver a speech, and then we watch that speech and say, hey, was that a good speech or not? Because there's 1,000 uncontrolled variables, right? So in this context of peer-reviewed research, yes, we have to do things a certain way, and it makes it hard sometimes to apply those findings to the real world.
And in the defense of research and the alpha brain study in particular, because again, our goal is not to like attack or anything like that. It's to try to look beyond just, again, the headline, the abstract, or like, it's to dig a little bit deeper. And I'll share something after this, assuming it doesn't lose my memory. I should have taken my alpha brain. But yeah, like, I mean, I think the biggest thing here is that as we look at these things, making sure that we're looking at the whole picture. And to the defense of research and to this particular study, it is so hard to get subjects. I mean, most of these studies had 20. I think one of them had 48, which is not that big of a sample size. And so just getting a sample is hard. And then also controlling for all of the things. Their previous
how much sleep did you get?
Yeah, the sleep, like chronically in an acute situation, maybe they're chronically good sleepers, but the last 2 nights because of travel or whatever, they got slammed and it's no good. Their diet, exercise, stress, their biological or their kind of natural anxiety levels and their cognition. And like, these are things that can be hereditary. So all of that stuff is so hard to control for. And so the scientific method is the best way that we have to begin examining those things. But when you're doing research, my wife mentioned last night, she said, and I'm terrible with English, by the way, and I hear her teaching our kids at home and all this. She goes, research is a prefix, meaning it's pre, and then search is like the root word. And it got me thinking. It was so timely, because to search, you look for something, but the in front of it means that you search again, and then you search again,
Nice.
and then you keep doing that. You don't stop. So then I'm thinking to myself, oh man, like research doesn't end. It never ends. And so if you see one thing that works, we'll keep looking, because there's probably something out there that'll say it doesn't work. And lo and behold, this is an example of that. There is a double blind, all the bells and whistles. Yeah, all the bells and whistles that you want in the methodology of creating a research study. And like you mentioned, 2 of the 26 tests. Yep, it worked. It worked. Similar. Oh, yeah. I don't want to go down the conspiracy road of medicate, but in all seriousness, of like medications. And there's also word on the street that when some of that data is submitted, it's the data that they want you to analyze, not the entire data set. It's not the raw data. And that's another.
And you could say to the credit of the authors of the paper that was funded, is, hey, they did include all of those 26 tests rather than just picking
100%.
The 2 that actually showed significance. They could have, unethically said, we did these 2 tests, significance, boom, there we go.
Yep.
But they showed all these other ones that didn't. So, and
that makes me more of a believer of this, and makes me go, well, hey, it may not have had the greatest performance, but it was only a handful of people taking it. Was that study with 20 as well?
I'm not sure.
It did not have a large sample.
No.
And so, there you go. Like, I would at least try that as I'm thinking about trying things that have had some scientific study behind them. I'd at least give it a whirl because of that level of honesty and candor, I guess.
You're a brave man.
Well, we did it. So, we are brave.
Right? Well, so to wrap a bow on sorry for the research 101 tangent.
But I think that's important, because this is not the last time we're talking about this stuff, or that we'll go into research. So I think that we hold this thing up that research is the end all and it's the best, but most people don't, like, we're trained like it's a
flawed system, but it's the best we have, type of thing.
It is, and that's okay. But just know the terms before you hold it up to whatever you think it may be, I guess.
And like, to your point, to always remember, like you can almost always find a study that supports almost any idea. But as soon as you zoom out and look at the body of literature, it's one of the things we always stress to students is, what does the body of literature say, right? And that's why I brought up the two supplements that actually, according to the body of literature, work are caffeine and creatine. Yes, there are studies that show HMB can increase, protein synthesis and muscle mass, but the body of literature doesn't support that.
Right.
There's a million things like that. So it's look at the body of research and draw your conclusions there, then zoom in and kind of see, are there little variables that are tweaked that might apply to my specific situation that may, make it more likely for me to see success. But the body of literature is what gives us the overall answer. So kind of wrapping that bow on, coming back to alpha GPC, it's just interesting that you said you didn't see any significance. I found a few papers that actually did show significance with alpha GPC.
Interesting.
And some of these, I will say, some of these are in some of those cognitively declining groups. Like, so following stroke, that was one of the areas that alpha GPC has been shown to improve, is following a stroke. Because of the effect it can have on vasodilation and increasing blood flow. That was one of the kind of connecting mechanisms there. It could also boost some of that cognitive recovery following that kind of, ischemic injury event. I saw some other research that showed it could improve memory and learning, could prevent brain fog, also can help with distractions and the ability to focus longer. I would say of the ingredients in Alpha Brain, alpha GPC is, I would say, the most strongly supported for having an effect on memory. It might not be huge, again, if we look at the body of literature as a whole, because there are studies, like you mentioned, that showed no effect. We have to take that into account. The overall effect may be small to medium, but
Mhm.
there are studies that do show an effect. However, the one key thing to note here that we'll identify with all of these different ingredients, the research on alpha GPC specifically, and I apologize if I'm stealing your thunder here, Levi, but since this was one of the ones you were looking at more so, the research that shows support is 300 to 600 milligrams of alpha GPC.
Mhm. The ones that
This,
we're looking at were between, it was 2 and 500, 2 and 400 were the dosages, and
mhm,
then placebo and a caffeine.
yeah. So if we keep like let's say 3 to 600, that's the common window I saw, and there
Mhm.
are studies with more or less, but 3 to 600 milligrams, taken acutely or taken once, was the common window. If you look at the label here, so the focus blend that I mentioned previously, which has alpha GPC, Bacopa monnieri, and Huperza A, the total for all of those was 244 milligrams, and it
Mhm.
doesn't tell us how much alpha GPC, how much Bacopa monnieri, how much Hup A. It just says all of those together is 244 milligrams. So
Mhm.
at the very least, we know there's not enough alpha GPC in this to really get us even into that 300 to 600 window, let
Mhm.
alone what the blend is of these other ingredients. And that was,
Right.
I will say, that was my main critique of alpha brain as a supplement is we have these different blends, the focus blend, the flow blend, and the fuel blend, and there's an amount per serving listed, but it doesn't tell us the amount for each of the individual ingredients. And so we're left to guess, like, well, how much tyrosine is in here? How much
Mhm.
phosphatidylserine? How much alpha GPC is in here? We
Mhm.
can't say. We don't know.
Yeah.
And that's a big hole.
Mhm. Yeah, and so that kind of leads me to, well, so two things. Number one, do you take the straight shot of something or do you mix it with others? And there's kind of two schools of thought here. Is that if you take the straight shot and you're kind of mainlining it, it could be great because you're getting just that. You're getting two. So it was 200 milligrams of caffeine, 250 of alpha GPC, and 500 of alpha GPC, and then a placebo. And that was one of the ones. So, but what's interesting is in all those there was no significant improvements in the things that they were exploring in that study. Anyways, so either taking just a whole shot of one thing, but then there's also suggestion that you need other things to help absorb
Right?
another primary thing, and that's why sometimes there's blends.
A
So
stack.
maybe correct, and so
Yeah.
maybe in the defense of the creators of this, or the folks that came up with this, the recipe, not recipe, what is it? You just said it.
Recipe.
Blend,
A
the
blend.
blend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that maybe you don't need as much of X because you have
Mhm.
Y and Z that help enhance this for absorption, usage, and availability, and otherwise.
It's like
So
look at an energy drink. It's like, all right, we've got 100 milligrams of caffeine, but we also have taurine in there or
yeah.
something like that. That could,
Hmm.
maybe the combination of the two is what gets us jolting. But
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
the blends. That's a fair, it's a fair point to make, at least, is to say yes, maybe these blends make a difference, having those kind of stacked on top of each other. But again, going back to the idea of the difficulties of controlling that research, is we don't have research. I guess we do have some research on this particular blend, but the research says it doesn't really do much.
And that's the thing. So for me, in my experience with supplements, I try to get the most raw version of it as possible
Mhm.
in general, because there are a lot of fillers and gimmicks and things going on in them.
Yep.
So if I take creatine, it's creatine. That's it.
Creatine monohydrate.
Yeah, that's it. I
Yeah.
mean, the ON black bottle with the green and like tan label on it, that's just the one. Like that one is the one I use. It's just creatine. And maybe that's something that we could try beyond this, on our own, is increasing some of the alpha GPC alone,
Yep.
and having some of that. Other things to consider, like in addition to dosage, is timing.
Mhm.
Like, is it better in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening? Does that depend on the individual? We've talked about how you've become, you were formerly a night owl, and now you're kind of becoming and transitioning into more of a morning person.
It's a work
Would
in
that,
progress.
yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things. Would taking it at night, when you're perceived to be firing better in the evening, or
Mm,
versus in the morning, is that a pick me up? So
yeah.
it's kind of taking some of that into consideration too.
Yeah, for sure. And that's so it's a fair or a good point to bring up, is kind of when should you take this? And at least from what I saw, the general recommendation is kind of 10 to 30 minutes before you need that focused work. Is it's supposed to be an acute, like, a little bit of a pick me up to help enhance the focus and the cognitive aspects that you're looking to get out of something like an alpha GPC.
Yeah. So for me, I'll speak to my specific experience. I didn't get a buzz from it. I didn't get a head change. I didn't get tingly. Cause there's some stuff where you take a pre-workout drink and you start white knuckling.
All the niacin and nitrous oxide. You're like, I feel it.
Beta alanine and all that stuff. And you're like buzzing, right? And I didn't get any of that. I will say on the days that I took, I found myself taking it most commonly on a Monday, which is a big work day for me. So I'm like, okay, I want to take this on a day where I would notice something. And I didn't feel any physiological, like there wasn't an indicator that it was flowing through my veins or anything. And maybe it was a bad idea to do it on a Monday because I'm most productive on Mondays because it's a big work day for me. I will say though, that mentally I was wanting it to work.
Yep.
And so I think for me, it was more of a placebo than anything.
Placebo. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, hey, like,
the placebo effect is still an effect.
It works. Yeah, for sure. And if like you are, and both for positive and negative things, but so in this case, I feel like it worked. My productivity was greater. You look at my checklist and my to-do list and everything on Monday and Tuesday's crushed. Later in the week, it's like, hey, but later in the week I allow more of that flexibility anyways. So I didn't want to do it on those days because that's not the day that I need the productivity. So I will say anecdotally that it worked, but I don't know if I found benefit from it, if that makes sense.
Is that more so of kind of like the statistical versus practical significance?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Where statistically it had no, but that would be an example almost where statistically there was no difference, but it actually did have a positive effect. Usually the case is though that it has statistical significance, but no practical application.
Right.
So it's almost like the opposite in that
That's interesting. Yeah.
So again, I'm not going to spend, $35 a month because what is it? It's 30 pills and it's 2 a day or 2 per dosage. I was taking 3, by the way. I'm 6'4", 220 pounds. Like, I'm not a norm. Like it's kind of like 2,000 calories a day. Well,
sure.
Yeah, cool. Sweet. So I did take one extra one, but can I ask this real quick before you tell me what your experience was with it? Do you like getting a little bit of a buzz, head change or something to know that the thing is working? Or does that distract you from it actually doing maybe what it could or should, or you would want it to do?
I think it definitely, like, I think subconsciously or consciously, we have this kind of connection of like, if you take something, you should feel a difference, right? And it's like, you kind of want that. But at the same time, if the goal is focus, memory, cognition, you shouldn't feel that, right? Like if we actually look at it academically, I should have known. I'm very much the same. I was kind of expecting to feel something and very much, didn't, and should have maybe been a little bit more realistic going into it.
For example, though, but like more vascular, if our veins are dilated, we have more blood flow, like was our heart rate different? Did we feel warmer? Like even some of those small things. Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, I wanted
with caffeine or something where
exactly.
Jitters.
Yeah. And if I'm being honest, I wanted to have the limitless experience. Bradley Cooper just pops that pill and he's like, yeah, like that's kind of what I was hoping for.
To the moon,
that's not but yeah, I too like to feel a little bit of something. It'd be like,
I too like to live dangerously.
Yeah, but it's no differently than, going to get a great meal and it not like it tasting good, but the textures aren't there or whatever those things. Like you want some kind of feedback, and it wasn't really there.
Yeah. Agreed. I had the same experience there. I did not feel anything differently.
But at this point, to be honest, I don't feel any different with coffee. It's just part of the routine now. Like I don't feel, oh, I had coffee 15 minutes ago and I'm grooving and jiving. Like I don't necessarily get that either. So especially at this point in terms of its usage. Yeah. But
interesting.
Maybe fast and then do it again.
Yeah. Right. Go through the withdrawal symptoms and then jump back in. Yeah. I very, very similar. I shouldn't say I wish. I definitely went into it thinking, oh, I wonder if I'll feel something, and I didn't. So whether that, that kind of placebo can work against you as well, where it's like, oh, I didn't feel anything, this is not working. And that's not the outcome, like that, or that desired outcome is not to feel something, right? So it's kind of making sure you have tempered expectations going into something like this. Let's see, I'm trying to debate about, like, I don't think I need to go back and get into any of these other ingredients. I think if I were to summarize, like I did kind of look into the research on several of these other ingredients in the fuel blend, specifically pterosilbene and vinpocetine. Basically, to kind of wrap a bow on all the other ingredients, I will say the common theme that I saw throughout is, yes, there is some research support for almost all of these, but many of the research papers I saw are in not cognitively healthy patients.
And that's what I was looking at, was cognitively healthy. So these were like generally fit. And I was literally just taking that note because I wanted to circle back to that, which is, you found significance in something like alpha GPC. And maybe it is great for those that are on the cognitive decline, but for those that are, functioning normally, if you will, then there's no additional benefits, but it could have great benefit for people on the decline, which then is great. Like, get it going,
Yeah, most of these, like I said, it's kind of after stroke or after some of these events. For example, one of these, phosphatidylserine, helps ADHD and auditory memory in kids. Like, that's part of the flow blend, right? So a lot of these you're seeing, maybe there's a little bit of benefit, but is it population specific? And more so, is it in the right dose? And again, the primary critique I would have is, we don't know the actual dosing of most of these ingredients. We have the blend has this much, but if you look at the specific ingredients that are studied, oftentimes the specific ingredient is above the actual, like the amount needed to reach significance in research is above what's actually listed in the blend, which has other things in it.
The total.
Yeah. That's again, main critique there. But
so you're saying take a full bottle at once.
Take them all. 3 was not enough.
Don't clip this. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully no one takes that one out of context there. Yep. As far as my experience, I mean, so I actually, because I had access to the trail making test, which is the one I mentioned earlier, I did that on a couple of different days with and without Alpha Brain, as a very uncontrolled, very poorly done research study on myself. Again, there is a practice effect with most of these cognitive tests that are used. I think subjectively, I would say a practice effect was the main difference that I saw in the time. So these tests are oftentimes timed. In the case of the trail making test, you're going 1A. There's different bubbles, right? For those of you who are just listening, and they're scattered all across this paper, and you're trying to find number 1 and then draw a line to A, number 2 to B, 3, C, 4, and you go through this list. You're doing that for time. So there's a practice effect there, a known practice effect that's discussed. So I tried to do a couple practice events, and then get into this, again, poorly controlled research study on myself. And I did see a slightly better time on the trail making test after Alpha Brain. So I will admit to that, right? There was a slight change. How much of that can be explained by how much sleep I got the night before or the time of day? Again, uncontrolled. I can't say that further how applicable this is to what I was hoping to get out of it. I would say very little, right? If I'm looking to try to have a better, verbal recall doing a podcast, right? I did that a couple times of taking this before a podcast to see if I subjectively noticed anything. How much change did I see? Maybe it was subjective and saying, or the placebo effect, right? And saying, yeah, I noticed a little bit better, but my overall conclusion was very much in line with the research that we saw of, probably not worth the money is my overall conclusion, right? I would say sleep more is the main thing I need to do.
For sure. Now, some pushback or additional thoughts there. In the one thing that was very different of the Alpha Brain study than the Alpha GPC stuff that I was looking at, there was like a 2-week, it was like a placebo or like kind of like an on-ramping phase. And then they received 6 weeks of treatment or 6 weeks of the supplement. Yeah, that's another thing too.
Like a cumulative effect.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what I'm wondering, where something like creatine, is there a loading phase to this thing? Or if you take it longitudinally, do you then get to see some of those benefits? And so as much as we would like to see it as an immediate, if I take B12, I don't all of a sudden get all this energy. But is it something, if you take it chronically, that you can gain some benefit from it? And that's something that we didn't do. We didn't have enough at our disposal. But I do think it would be interesting if we took it for 30 straight days, 4 weeks, and in a higher dosage, just alpha GPC. I'd wonder, or in alpha brain, but took maybe a higher dosage to where we knew we were getting closer to the recommendation for some of these ancillary or these other ingredients. But that would
I will say
cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, the cost is a factor. The pushback I would have on that, one of the ingredients, so huperzine, it's Hoop A, HUP-A, Huperzia serrata is the extract that they're using here in the formulation, but huperzine A, so the mechanism of huperzine is supposed to inhibit acetylcholine esterase, which is what breaks down acetylcholine. So if you inhibit that, the idea would be, well, if we're not breaking down as much, then we would have more acetylcholine. That free choline is what in the brain is supposedly, the mechanism there is to help with learning, memory, cognition, etc. So so getting into kind of the safety aspects of this, huperzine, from what I've read, is one that you do want to cycle on and off of. You don't want to cumulatively keep taking this over and over. And so that's where, taking something, again, the trouble with taking something that has a formulation or a blend rather than the specific, in this case, alpha GPC ingredient, you may want to be careful with continually taking something like a huperzine extract or Hoop A. Whereas the alpha GPC, I saw the research on safety for alpha GPC that I saw. Unfortunately, the safety data was in rats, but up to 10,000 milligrams per kilogram in mice was the lethal dose. So that gives us a huge range there. If we're looking at 300 to 600 milligrams, it should be very safe. So again, probably not something you want to take all the time, even just alpha GPC by itself. Like it should be more of my understanding is it should be more of an acute dose when you need a little bit of an extra boost. But always something to be aware of when you're looking at a supplement of any kind is, what does the safety data say? Should I be careful with any of these ingredients with either taking more of them or a cumulative effect? So yeah, something to keep in mind.
Yeah. Great point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, what's kind of next for you? I mean, I think for me, it was kind of, what is it? My personal experience and kind of what some of the research is saying. I mean,
overall conclusion. Is this something you would take again? Why not?
The reason why I would say no, I would be interested in taking it more long-term and or drilling down on more of the alpha GPC only.
Yep.
But number one is cost. Like that's a barrier for me, where it's like, if I'm, and this is why, it's not just because I want to be cheap or whatever, but let's say a bottle of I think even the cheapest alpha GPC is what, $20 or so by the time shipping and handling and all that stuff is like, somewhere in that, I would assume. Just that alone, but that's for a smaller amount. To get the amount that seems like you would need between 250 and 500 milligrams, which were some of the papers proposed. Like, I don't know if I would want to do that, because it would just be too expensive to take it. Like, I would try it long-term to see if it worked, like it with chronic use or long-term use, but I don't think I would pay that, because if it's $40 or $30 or $20, whatever, why am I not using that for, better food, higher quality food, or just trying to sleep better first? I think that, again, anytime I think about supplements, and we've talked about this, is there am I doing everything else right?
Right.
If I'm doing everything else right, sprinkle that in. But until I start doing all that other stuff, or, there's argument for maybe something like, and maybe we'll try this, like a hydration supplement. Maybe that'd be something to try in an acute setting. When it's really hot out, we're in the middle of summer or whatever, and I'm working a bunch. Does it benefit me to drink that before I go out and split wood for a few hours? Maybe. But like, I would be spending that money on something that I know absolutely works, which is quality whole foods, or
would
a chili blanket or whatever.
Would it be fair to say it's not cost, it's cost benefit?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. It's not money, because I don't want to say that I'm not willing to spend money on my health or wellness or whatever, but it's just, to your point, if I'm spending $20 to $40 a month, and it's more expensive than than $20 a month. I can assure you of that. But let's say it's $50. Is there something else for $50 that would get me more? And cost benefit. And I think for me, in my experience, yes, there is.
I would agree with that. I think the cost benefit of this for me, again, everybody's mileage may be different, but based on research, based on our experience, I would agree. It's the cost benefit is not quite there for me.
Mm-hmm.
The benefits are pretty minute, and I think that money could be better spent elsewhere.
Yeah. And it's not it's not a poo-poo. Maybe some people take this and they do get lit up and they're like, hey man, I'm dialed in. Great. Then do it. Like, that's the thing with all this stuff is we're giving you our experience. There's some papers and studies out there that give you another kind of head start, or at least some insight. And then, but you got to go do it too. Like, so
go take drugs.
Take a chance like Columbus. Yeah, that's twice. What are you saying here, sir?
The overall conclusion.
That
not giving. Let me be clear.
Right. I'm gonna snip this one out and post it everywhere. Yeah. But it was fun. I will say I really enjoyed the experience. Like, I really like to try those things because it lets you know, instead of, oh, someone said this and who said that, you get to try it. And yeah, it's fun to do that.
Yeah. As long as you're, again, disclaimer, be careful, talk to your physician, yada, 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 all that stuff. But so that's, I think, hopefully a good way to wrap this one up, and also say next, we are going to be looking at some sleep supplements in particular. We'll let you guys know the details of that as we get into it, but that's kind of our next experiment, self-experiment that we're going to try is some specific stuff for sleep, in quality of sleep, quantity of sleep, etc. So we'll keep you all posted, and hopefully this has been, something fun for you and maybe helpful for you in terms of, stuff you're thinking about or looking at. And if there's, I don't know if I should throw this out. If there's stuff you want us to take, let us know. We'll try it.
But definitely. I was going to say that too. And kind of end with that is, if you guys have found something that works for you, great. Like, let us know. Cause I want something that works that, if you're here sitting like, well, Levi, you're saying that it doesn't work if you take it acutely. I'm like, okay, well, what is it? And let's, is it legal first? Is it over the counter second? And then from there, let's have that discussion. Cause there are things that you can get over the counter, like the modafinils and all these different deals that you can do. But, and I think that's kind of the thing for me at the end of the day is, if it works, it's probably not over the counter. Probably not. Maybe. Creatine, caffeine.
I'm going to leave it at that. I was going to get into some ingredients, but I'll leave it at that. So.
Creatine, caffeine, maybe. But in general, how would I rephrase it? The medical grade version of whatever these things are probably more potent than the over-the-counter version of things.
Fair.
I'll end it there.
Right.
So I don't keep putting my other foot in my mouth.
As with everything, you guys, I feel like disclaimers are needed anytime we're getting into this stuff. And just to reiterate, disclaimers, right? Be careful. Make sure, look for those third-party tested supplements. If you're going to take a supplement, double check with your physician. Make sure that it's safe for you to take. Don't just experiment blindly. Look for research, as we've tried to illuminate here for you a little bit. And
look at the research, like read the whole thing. Don't read, hey, efficacy in this or statistics or significance, because most papers won't have the title of statistical significance. It'll say significance. So make sure what kind it is and look for the magnitude of that significance as well.
Yep. Well said. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we'll keep you posted on our next 30-day experiment.
100.